So welcome everybody to another episode of RM Sotheby's Car Show. Now at the moment that makes complete sense if you're watching this because you can probably see a Ferrari Formula 1 car behind me, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. We are in a room, not a very big room, in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Geneva. And normally when we do these podcasts from an auction, I'm talking to you from a car auction, and I would be surrounded by 50 lovely cars. But this is not a car auction. Despite the Ferrari that is behind me right now, we are in quite a small room, and actually we are just surrounded by gems, jewellery and watches, and that really is the emphasis of what's going on here today. And in fact, out in the corridor, there's lots of handbags that my wife would like but can't afford. So Peter, why don't you just explain a little bit more about why we are sitting in a room in Geneva surrounded by jewellery and other things?
Well, is it good afternoon or good morning? I'm not quite sure. But,
you can pick.
Well, we've just come very recently from our London auction, which was a great success. We had lots of cars for sale there, but we've seen in the last few years a real lust in the market for recent era Formula 1 cars, particularly the very, very best of their type. And the car we have behind us is very much in that category, being a 2003 World Championship year winning Ferrari. The model is an F1 2003-GA, and the GA stands for Gianni Agnelli, as a tribute to the man obviously behind Fiat and Ferrari.
He died that year, right?
He died that year, exactly. But the reason it's here, and it's not something we can put on our wrist, is we are here as part of the Sotheby's luxury group. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the background to that, but we do enjoy this wonderful partnership working with Sotheby's, but we come under the luxury umbrella, and we described that recently as everything one can wear, drink or drive. And what's behind us has four wheels, it has a steering wheel over there, and I consider it something that we could drive, but not quite as well as Michael Schumacher, who's the man that won 5 races in this very car.
He did.
In the
so
2003.
seven world championships, lots of races, lots of race wins under his belt. 2003 was a terrifically dominant year for Ferrari, and he won 5 races and a couple of other podiums in this actual car. And I think one of our colleagues, Gus, he did a calculation, I think, that he determined that Schumacher won more than 60% of the points. 70% of the points that went towards winning the championship that year were won in that actual car.
Having said that, also very significantly, he didn't get in this car until the 5th race. So the beginning of the season, he wasn't in this car. He still had the previous car. This car wasn't ready. So that just makes those wins and that dominance even more significant for that year. But so from the point of view of it being here in Geneva, in the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, and we're going to be chatting with our colleague from Sotheby's, Josh Pullen, in a moment, the sense we have is that we feel that this gives this car absolute focus. It has its own podium here behind us, and we think the audience for this car is not only within the traditional car collecting community. We feel that it's in a much broader luxury or trophy community, and this car's won lots of trophies, and we think it could be a trophy for its new owner.
And well, I think that segues perfectly into bringing Josh Pullen into this conversation. And Josh is the head of the global luxury division. You've occasionally come to our sales in recent times, and it's been lovely to have you there. We've now parachuted ourselves into one of your traditional space, shall we say? And can you just say a little bit more about why we as RM Sotheby's are here making a nuisance of ourselves at this lovely auction?
Absolutely. It's great to be here with you guys, and I love the show and listen along on Spotify regularly. So it's
very good.
It's great.
Tell all your friends.
Exactly. A little plug. But no, I think ultimately, as Peter was saying, I think these are the kind of exceptional items which really can sort of elevate out of a traditional context, and we believe that the context really matters to tell the story and really position these kind of amazing items in a different context and present to a different audience that fantastic story. So, you know, as we're sitting here, of course we have the Ferrari here, but over to the left there is a collection of blue diamonds from De Beers. It's about $70 million worth of stones that we'll offer over the next 12 months. And I think it's a nice contrast with the Schumacher F1 here. You know, to think about where RM and the automotive category fits within luxury, though, I think is a great question. When you think about luxury and our division, we kind of have a couple of different things happening. I would say we have our traditional categories like jewelry and watches and wine, so very established, very important and sort of well understood luxury categories. Then we've got a bunch of really explosive growth categories that we're seeing, like spirits, so whiskey, incredibly fast and growing market, sneakers, sports memorabilia, and things like handbags as well fit into that. And then we have obviously our recent, working closer together in the automotive space, and also Concierge, which is our real estate auction business.
You've mentioned a couple of categories that have recently gone a little bit crazy. And of course, whiskey is not a new invention, is it?
Right.
And I guess neither is sort of, you know, sports memorabilia. And what we have here is a very large item of sports memorabilia, isn't it? A lot of people listening or watching may be aware of the Maradona soccer shirt,
yes.
the Hand of God shirt, which sold for
$9 million.
$9 million. And there was a Michael Jordan vest that sold for a very considerable sum as well recently.
Yeah, 10 million. Yeah.
10 million again, we touched upon this earlier actually. I mean, this car is in Swiss francs, we're sort of hoping between 7 and 10. Mm-hmm. In the car world, that's a very expensive car. Right. It's not often we come to an auction with a car more valuable. Obviously, there are cars more valuable, but you know, it's right up there. So perhaps that's actually quite good value for money. There's an awful lot of technology in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's the story that people fall in love with. And so if you think about the Michael Jordan jersey, so game-worn jersey from the NBA Finals series, and as I said, sold for $10 million. And I think that's the kind of item which there's basketball and sports collecting enthusiasts, and then there are people that are looking for just the best possible example in any category. Yeah. And I think that's where we're seeing that, whether it's the Michael Jordan jersey, the Buzz Aldrin's space-worn jacket, a full Gorgosaurus, it's like a terrifying dinosaur skeleton, or a Schumacher car. People are coming to those categories because they're looking for the best of the best, and they fall in love with the story, and that resonates. And so I think that's why this makes sense in this context here.
I think, Josh, as well, when you talk about the storytelling, it's absolutely right. But it's also the way you buy it. And I think competing to buy something like this or the other items you've got here in that live auction environment where you've got the telephone desk, you've got the internet, and you've got people in the room, yep. I do think that adds to the buzz, it adds to the excitement, it adds to the jeopardy, but also, who knows, at that point, we don't know for sure who's going to buy it on the day, so we're all excited, we're, on the starting grid before the auction, and once the flag goes down, there's the race to the finish, who's going to end up owning the car. And I think that's part of the storytelling. If you go back to your country house and have a dinner party, and there's a Schumacher Formula 1 car or some whatever it may be, from luxury or even traditional art, you have a story behind your purchase as well, which I think people really enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's there's a real electricity, whether it's in the sale room physically, or if you're on the telephone, it's always a joy bidding for clients. It gets the heart rate up, and then online is also, it's unbelievably tense as you're, clicking online with your laptop or on your mobile phone. And I think you're right. That then becomes part of the story for you and your connection to an item.
Just going back to the other categories within the luxury division. I mean, where have you seen a transition from what was predominantly a live auction environment to something that is now more online based?
Yeah, very much. And I think some of those we have purely online auctions. So for example, the handbags are not being sold in a live auction, they're sold in an online format. And for some categories that makes sense because clients are super comfortable coming in and participating in that format. The other thing that we've seen is that online has brought in a new generation of clients. And so, in fact, in categories like whiskey or sneakers, handbags and also watches, our biggest segments of clients are under the age of 40.
Wow.
And we see that the majority of those are coming in online because they feel comfortable to self-serve, they trust the technology aspect, and we're starting to see that then obviously shift into our jewellery or watches categories and wine as well.
Interesting, Josh, when you mention trust, which of course is important whether you're spending $1, a Swiss franc or a pound or 10 million, of course you want to know what you're getting for your money. And when you're buying cars, older cars, they've had a life, they've been restored several times, some better than others, some have a more traceable, trackable history than others. But when it comes to something like this, even if you're not a car expert, this car, it's over there, has the Ferrari Red Book certification. We've been driving it, or Mick Schumacher, in fact, Michael Schumacher's son, has been driving this car. This has been through Ferrari Classic A in terms of its authenticity, but also its running condition, and many of the components on this are sort of within under 25% of their life cycle. So it's a very, very usable car. You can get in it to drive, and there's absolutely no questioning its authenticity, its history, which races Michael did in this car, chassis 229. And I think for a buyer that's not used to buying cars, you add to that trust.
We are quite often, and particularly on this podcast, we're doing these around, quite often the subject matter is based around something of very high value.
Sure.
So not so long ago, Peter and I went to the Mercedes Museum to do a podcast about the Uhlenhaut Coupe, and there it was, this car that was 135 million euros. But you were able to pull a number off your head, I think, as the average transaction price.
I mean, typically we're around sort of $10,000 to $15,000.
Right. So it's not all, and
that includes wine and spirits, obviously, which so there's a big thing.
Yeah. You know, looking at the grandeur of the Sotheby's building in Bond Street, and the fact that there's so much fantastic stuff to see in there, free. Yeah. You know, it's galleries full of art and all sorts of things that people could just walk off the pavement and come and see. But people are intimidated about going
Absolutely.
in.
Yeah.
And it's quite reassuring to know that, okay, I'm not making light of the fact that any purchase at £10,000 or £15,000 is significant, but we're not simply in the business of selling things that cost $1 million and 1.5 or 10.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you read those are the headlines that you see, with the Schumacher or the De Beers Blues and those sorts of things. But if you're collecting, then the brand is actually a lot more accessible than you would tend to think.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely the case here. I mean, we have, as you said, the handbags, different audience, much more approachable. The watches, start, I think, we have estimates as low as 5,000, and then we go all the way up to 700,000 for the top Patek.
Yep.
And I think that's the nice sort of spread in the business.
We've often talked as well, Josh, about community, and I think it is that sense that you can work with someone, advise them, help them to acquire, and help them to sell, of course, in so many different categories today. That, over the years, those categories have evolved, things like books and, as Peter mentioned, sporting memorabilia, but perhaps sporting memorabilia in a more traditional sense. But that's obviously constantly evolving. We're talking about sporting memorabilia that's a few years old, rather than, let's say, a cricket bat from the 1920s. Right. So it's all that, even though the time
you
space...
You mean a cricket bat that you would have used at school?
Well, yeah, the one that you're going to get to see in a moment. No, the point is the time frame's condensed, and that's the same for us. I mean, if you look at what we're selling, okay, we were just on the London to Brighton run at the weekend, and that's about as old as, that's the dawn of motoring. So sort of cars from the late 1890s all the way through to 1904. But we're selling cars, all the way through to the 2000s. In fact, we sold a Bugatti Chiron from 2022. So we're covering now the entire era of motoring from the dawn to the present moment. However, it's still quite a small space. But it's interesting how building that community, you give them a bottle of wine, have a good chat, then they buy a watch. I don't know, that's why the wine's the least expensive.
You're right, and I think that evolution or that sort of that time period that you're talking about in the automotive, you could apply that to the Art Deco jewels that we have here, all the way to the Blue Diamond, which literally has just been polished, a couple of months ago, or pocket watches, all the way up to the FP Journe, the 8th watch that he ever made, which is one of the highlights of the sale.
We all like watches. I know you do as well, Peter. And you start to think about what it is, that fascination that continues with mechanical objects. We can all look at the time on our telephone. We don't need it, and it's the same with cars. I'm just sitting here. The thing people love now is the glass back case in many cases, or cases you can open up and see the mechanical movement, the beauty of that, watch it, the heart beating, the heart of the watch beating. But I'm looking at the steering wheel here now out of this very car, which is a hugely valuable part of it. You can't drive this car without that steering wheel, which is why it's kept separately. It's so valuable, and most people keep them at the Ferrari factory. But if you just look at the sort of, while you might say the engine and the transmission is the heart of the car, it's not going to work without that steering wheel. And I've just been looking at the blown up picture there. There's around 20 buttons on there and dials and knobs, and I think we could fairly say that's a steering wheel complication.
Absolutely.
And they're even worse today. Max Verstappen has a hell of a job.
You're driving at 200 miles per hour with people all over your rear wing, and you're looking at and you're getting instructions in the radio saying turn this up or turn that down or do this.
And you struggle turning your
radio,
your central
my
heating
wireless
thermostat up and down. You're wireless, yes, quite. Let's briefly perhaps go back to the Ferrari. Peter, talk a little bit about Formula One cars. We've talked about the fact that this car can be contextualised potentially as a piece of sculpture, as a piece of sports memorabilia, but actually if you want to buy this car and go and drive it, Ferrari make that possible for you, don't they?
Absolutely. I think the market for modern era Formula One cars has never been more active than it is at the moment. We've sold, in fact, with Sotheby's, we sold Mercedes-Benz, I think, at the New York Contemporary Sale. Was that? No, it was a Ferrari.
We sold a Ferrari,
but we also sold a Ferrari along with. But my point being is the more contemporary Formula One cars for many years weren't really considered usable, and so many people would say, well, if I can't drive it, what's the point of owning it? That's changed hugely in the last 10 to 15 years. Firstly, because Ferrari have a program called Corsa Clienti, which allows owners of these cars to keep the car at the factory. It's maintained at the factory by Ferrari specialist technicians. You can take it out on the Fiorano test track, which is in the video behind us, that those not watching can't see, but have a look online on our website, or you can join their race series. So they're teaching you how to drive, they're maintaining your car. It's making it, obviously that doesn't come cheap, but it does mean that you can emulate your hero. Now, you're not going to get in and drive this car. If anyone's watched old Top Gears and things like that, when people have tried to drive Formula One cars, it is not easy, because you've got to get all the components up to temperature. If you don't have any downforce,
it takes about an hour to start one of these, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I mean, if the brakes aren't warm enough, hot enough, they're not going to work properly. The tyres the same. You're not getting any downforce, and really, for all of those reasons, you can't just get in and drive this, but you can learn. And
you need deep pockets, don't you?
You need deep pockets, and you probably need to not be as heavy as me. Josh, I think you were saying that you were looking at this with your son earlier, which is pretty cool. So
yeah, he's 7, so he's probably got a bit of
probably about the
learning
right
to do.
size.
Yeah, exactly. At my size.
So that's it. And but not only that, I think it's also been influenced by the TV audience of Formula One, which is going more and more around the world. You know, there've been lots and lots of there has been lots of energy pushed into Formula One to make it a global sport, more so in the US now than it's ever been, and that's meaning that these cars appeal to US buyers as well, whereas perhaps 20 years ago the number of Americans watching Formula One was probably far fewer than it is today, and that now means these cars do have global appeal. Japan, Asia, the Middle East. So it's opened up the audience who will have seen Schumacher, and he has become their hero. So I think there's a lot of moving parts to it, but it's all going in a very interesting direction. And as we said earlier, when you think about people buying things, not just for investment, but as trophies. So you may have your Michael Schumacher vest in a glass case. You may have your home where you entertain your friends, and you've got a sporting memorabilia corner, and this is pride of place, and you've got other similar items. Why not? Helmets. I mean, for many years, people have collected, the helmets of their hero racing drivers, and they are extremely valuable. The big challenge with them is authentication, of course, but in this case, it's not a challenge.
Good point. Authentication. So the Maradona shirt. Where do you begin with the authentication of something like that?
So the shirts are fascinating, actually. So you take the Maradona shirt or the Jordan shirt, and basically, because those have come from moments of contemporary sporting history, there's enough footage from those actual games for you to be able to do a photo match. And so so you can actually compare then the threads and the individual sort of pulls or discrepancies on a jersey to footage from the game, and
so
each
that's
fingerprint.
forensic, isn't it?
It really is, yeah. And so each sort of shirt has its own fingerprint in a way, where the perforations are on the shirt, then where the numbers are stitched on. Are they spot on? Are they straight? Are they slightly altered because of a brush or a touch in the game? And then you can actually really, with 100% certainty, say, hey, this is the jersey that was worn in that space.
So it's amazing that you can actually, if there's any ambiguity over the heritage, that you can actually do it from photography.
Well, I guess as well that loops back to your earlier comment about people buying wine from their birth year or whiskey or cognac. I in fact recently gifted someone a bottle of wine from their birth year, just as well they weren't too old. It was 2019.
That's great.
Very generous box,
I was trying to say that I'm a very generous person, but the point is,
it was the best £6 you ever spent, wasn't it?
in fact I got them a case. But the point is that these things, whether it's wine or the shirts, the Michael Jordan shirt, Maradona, and many other things, not only do they represent an era, are they icons, but they represent a moment in time. I was at the Monaco Grand Prix, or I was in Monza when Schumacher won in this car, or I was at the game. So that, that opens it up. That opens it up to saying, actually, that moment in time for me was so special. Now I've made the money. I want to, put that in a box and live with it because I loved it so much. And why not?
Well, that's where you started, Peter. You said you can wear it, drive it, or drink it.
And we mustn't forget, when it comes to concierge, live in it.
There you go.
But I'm not going to say that's too much of a mouthful.
We're going to be sitting down in part 2 with a watch expert and a gem and jewellery expert, and one of the watches that I had a sneak peek at earlier turns out to be a pre-production watch, which is meant to be gold, but it isn't. It's stainless steel that has been plated in gold
to see what it would look like.
To see what it would look like, but it's got the right movement and everything else, and that's more valuable than were it solid gold, because it's got that story behind it, which is interesting. So on that happy note, teasing what's going to come in part 2, I think we'll wrap it up there, and it's been really interesting chat. So thank you, Peter, and especially to you, Josh.
Great.
Thank you for joining us, and the auction's tomorrow, right?
tomorrow. We start at 11 a.m. and then into 4 p.m.
So the car goes under the hammer tomorrow. And as far as everything else is concerned, that's not the car, the watches, and you're feeling good?
Feeling excited, yeah. It's great,
Yeah.
great to be here. It's been unbelievably busy, and we're looking forward to tomorrow.
You need people with wallets to turn up. Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks.
And we will be back very shortly with part 2. Hello, welcome everyone. Whether you're watching or listening, the RM Sotheby's Car Show podcast. We're sitting in a room with lots of jewellery and watches and all sorts of wonderful things. And we are joined by two Sotheby's experts for this Luxury Week sale here in Geneva. We've got Mr. Paul Redmayne, who is a gems and jewellery expert based in the Sotheby's office in Dubai. And we've got Philip Demeter. I make sure I have to say that right, who is a watch specialist. And what we're going to get into a little bit now is...
Is that me?
Oh, and well, yes. Oh, Lord, it's all about him. And we also have Peter Warman, who was with me in part 1, and I'll apologise now to all the listeners that you've decided to join us for part 2
Yes,
as well.
yeah.
No, very nice to have you here, Peter. Thank you. And Peter knows more about. Well, you've got more money to spend on watches and gems than I have, so I mean, you can sort of wade in, gentlemen. We were talking a little bit with Josh Pullen in the first part of this show. We were talking about how RM Sotheby's has become integrated into the luxury division of Sotheby's, or far more integrated than it ever was. And we've bought a Ferrari Formula 1 car to this amazing sale. What place in your calendar does an auction like this have? I mean, I know that you do a lot of online selling as well, don't you? But in a live auction environment like we've got here in Geneva, that's a good opportunity for you to interact with your clients. And is this a sale where you are bringing potentially some of your biggest items that you will sell this year? Is this where a lot of them will come?
Yeah, and certainly from my perspective, so I was based in Hong Kong for 10 years, so with COVID, an opportunity like this is really to reconnect and re-engage with clients. Everyone flies in, you're here for a week, people are focused, and you get so many people flying in from all over the world, from the US, from Asia, from all over Europe. And so it's just reconnecting with people. We have collectors coming down, and we have 2 auction seasons per year, 2 main auction seasons for the live seasons per year. And we bring out the big guns, and certainly Geneva is known for the big guns.
And is that the same? Exactly the same for you, Philip?
Absolutely, we work 6 months for 1 day, for the day of the auction,
Right.
basically. And here it all comes together, and we definitely bring the nicest pieces.
So you need a good day tomorrow then? 6 months work?
6 months work, yeah, better should be. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul, on the jewellery and gem side, let's just look at the last 5 or 6 years. Have you seen a change in what people are looking for?
We've seen contemporary jewellers, the demand from clients for contemporary jewellers has really gone up. And we have, if I can bring one
Yes.
particular ring here. So this is a 10 carat grey diamond. And this is by a jeweller called Hemmeler, who's a very old German jeweller, and it's now run by Christian and his wife Yasmin. Christian's in his 40s. I don't think I'm doing him a disservice by saying he's in his 40s. And
You'll probably find he's 26 and he's now he's deeply upset.
I've just lost a client.
I can show it to them.
And you have, there we go. Philip's got the nice white gloves on.
There we go, everyone. Here. Oh, did something? No, it's still there.
It's the
price
So,
tag, you don't want to see
I don't want to look at the price
So
tag.
there's
Tell
a
us
couple of
about
things of interest about this ring. So number one is the material. So you see straight away it's black. Traditionally, we're used to seeing on the main thoroughfares of London, New York, Paris, Geneva, you see white gold, you see platinum, you see rose gold, you see yellow gold. This is black. This is iron. So it's set in iron. And Hemmeler use these. We have a necklace here behind me, which is in bronze. But he works with very different materials. The inside of the ring is actually 18 karat white gold. So he's fused iron and 18 karat white gold.
Is that, and I mean, this is a bit of a technical question, is that difficult to do?
Yeah, and it's
because iron's not easy to work with.
Yes, and it's difficult to work with bronze and to set that with gold as well,
Yeah.
to fuse these materials. And then when you see the diamond, so the diamond is actually a fancy grey diamond. So diamonds come in all colours of the rainbow. They're not just white diamonds, they're not just, we hear a lot at auction about white diamonds, pink diamonds, blue diamonds, yellow diamonds. They come in all different colours and hues. This is a grey diamond, and you see the way it's set at an angle. So it's not even a traditional setting. It's set horizontal or diagonally. It's just something different, and so this is.
By the end of the night, that would look very straight to him. But
I actually
It's beautiful.
think that is fantastic, and I love the fact that it's sort of throwing the usual kind of geometry of
absolutely,
jewellery out. It's throwing it out the window, kind of thing.
And that's what Hemler's known for, doing very sculptural works.
Yeah.
It's curious as well, though, when you look at jewellery design over, as you mentioned, I guess the 50s and the 60s were the last real traditional eras when perhaps women could still wear jewellery to a dinner party or to a ball in perhaps a way that's less fashionable or commonplace today. But I mean, if you look at the parallel with the motor car industry, new materials that have been used and technology and the way it's evolved, and looking at this, it almost looks like it's a technological piece in itself. You look at manufacturers like Pagani and the types of materials they use in, and of course with carbon fibre weave, they have to be very careful to make sure it follows the contours of the body and you get a certain amount of symmetry. And when I look at this, I almost imagine the sort of couple or the person that would wear this and what they would drive. It's very contemporary in that way.
And it's interesting, speaking of carbon fibre, so there's an Italian designer, contemporary designer called Fabio Cellini, who works a lot in carbon fibre, and he sets diamonds and pearls in carbon fibre, very dramatic pieces, big cuffs, big earrings, very statement pieces, but he works in carbon fibre, and he'll fuse carbon fibre and pearls, so something that's very traditional with something that's ultra modern. Jewellery does reflect the time, so what you were saying, Peter, about maybe the 50s and 60s, it was the last era of having those balls, those functions, those occasions. Yes, but it depends geographically where you're based. So certainly in Europe, but in Asia and the Middle East, you have the wedding season. There are still these ostentatious occasions where you absolutely can load up.
Because a lot of what we're discussing today and is on display, I guess, is mostly 20th century, 21st century, and that's the era that we're dealing in, obviously, because the car wasn't around much before the start of the 20th century or the turn. And when you look at those sort of art movements throughout that century and you look at the designs, whether it's the 20s and the 30s, and you get those sort of obvious Art Deco styles, which obviously found their way into car design. But what was interesting in car design, it was also at a time where they were developing aerodynamics in a way that they felt the teardrop was the most aerodynamic shape you could find, and cars were following those lines. And then obviously in the post-war, you still had that glamour. There were lots of big, grand Rolls Royces, limousines and Bentleys, very much, as you say, you think about the debutante balls and going to the opera. Then you get through to the 70s, the colours, the browns, the greens, the yellows. And if you go all the way through, it's amazing to me actually how those fashions almost follow each other. So what we see impact in car design, you can see through fashion, and I'm sure we'll have the same conversation in a similar way with watches when you look at the skeleton watches and things. So in some way, I don't know, introducing different colours, blue diamonds, yellow diamonds. I mean, I guess in the 1950s and 60s that was less.
No, and they were really ignored. So coloured diamonds back in the 50s and 60s, they were the things that were a byproduct of when you're looking for proper diamonds.
Yeah, they were blemished.
They were, it's like, we look at these horrible things. We've got where's the white diamond? Where's the white diamond? And it's fascinating now. I mean, we've seen the price increase and leading on. So that's now opened up into a diversification of portfolios for people. And you see people, there are funds, there are coloured diamond funds, there are jewellery funds, and so we've seen this corner of the market that's really taken off, and it's been a recent phenomenon.
It is. I think it's really fascinating. And I think now with the partnership the way it is between RM Sotheby's, obviously the car side of the business, and the luxury and art for that matter, we've got a really interesting opportunity ahead of us to explore that 20th century evolution in design, and perhaps that's a way of also helping us advise clients. They may not know this sort of jewellery exists in their world, but the modern Pagani or modern supercar buyer, I imagine, is going to be quite attractive to that sort of technological tour de force in jewellery.
So, Paul, the ring we were just handling, what sort of value does that have?
So this is $1.5 million to $2 million US dollars.
And obviously the intrinsic value in that is the gem itself.
It's the diamond. It's a 10 carat fancy grey diamond.
Yeah.
And how do carat? I guess you value by carats, or at least that's a starting point, and then quality comes into it. Today, yellow versus blue. I know we've got a fabulous selection of blue diamonds here versus pure white versus grey. How close are they in terms of their value?
So very interesting. This is a 303 carat yellow diamond, and it's internally flawless. So this is the largest pear-shaped diamond ever certified by the GIA, Gemological Institute of America, who issue the certificates. And it's the largest internally flawless or flawless diamond they've ever certified. And this is going up for sale. We're selling this in New York. This is a no reserve lot. But referencing the conversation about the price, so the estimate range for this stone is 11 to 15 million US dollars, which is exactly what this 5 carat 53 vivid blue diamond.
And so what you're saying, but they're
similar range, So 11, 15 million. And the blue diamond is about the size of an index fingernail. And then the yellow diamond is obviously considerably larger.
15 million.
Well, you'd probably.
I mean, I
may have a word with Lisa. For,
Italian lira, I might be in the market.
And that's really delicately set. I mean, it's all about the stone there, isn't it?
It is.
And the stone really is. So this is not about the design. It's purely about the stone. And it's about having an open setting. I call it an honest setting, a transparent setting, in the sense that you've got the light. With coloured diamonds, it's all about the play of light. And so you want the maximum amount of colour and the saturation to come back up to you out the top of the diamond. You don't want it to leak out the bottom of the diamond. It's aesthetically wasted.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful stone, and you're able to, because it's such a stunning stone and the way it's been cut, it retains its colour and it brings its colour, throws its colour back up. And so you can have a very open setting with light coming in from all sides, and it still looks very, very blue.
And that's very Mediterranean, isn't it? I mean, you need to be on the back of a beautiful yacht enjoying that, I think. Just looking at the colour of the... Don't fall over.
You just don't fall over,
Make sure it's... But I'm curious, so you probably can't say there is a typical case, but more or less, would it be more normal to buy the gem, the stone, and have it set, or would somebody that's polished that stone want to influence the way that it's set? I mean, I guess they have a setting in mind when they're polishing.
Yeah, and it depends on the client. So very often at auction you do find that we will unset the stone. And for instance here, Mr. White Gloves, please. Yeah, these are loose diamonds. So in that box there's about 70 million US dollars.
Here you are.
And
70 million.
So, I mean, in the case of... So when somebody buys, let's say this Formula One car, when somebody buys something like that with us, some will know that you can go to Ferrari and have the car run for you through their Corsa Clienti program. They'll know exactly what they're buying.
I've opened the box and dislodged all the diamonds. 70 million pounds worth of diamonds.
Security.
I'm just going to let go of it.
Okay.
You're on camera as well, by
I
the way. You won't be allowed back in.
can't be trusted.
We can fix that.
They've
No worries,
moved.
we can fix it.
the dancing diamonds.
Dancing diamonds. So somebody buying a car like this is going to talk to us and say, well, okay, I'm really interested, but how do I run it? How hard is it to run? How much will it cost me to run? Where do I keep it? You know, etc., etc. And when you look at diamonds like this, how much of a service within the jewellery department do you provide in saying, well, look, somebody comes, new client, has the deep enough pockets to buy this, but will you then go on a journey with them, or advising them on design, etc., etc.? So it becomes a longer term relationship than just walking away with that in their handbag.
We're very fortunate. We have, similar to you guys. You guys have the relationships with Ferrari. You have the relationships with the big manufacturers. We have the relationships too. And so, if someone wants something set at Cartier, then we can make the introduction, and we can have that. We can facilitate that. But if someone wants something set, maybe in a pendant, then we can do designs. I've just sold a couple of white diamonds to a client, loose diamonds, this week, and the client has asked me to make 2 ring designs for them. They would like them set as rings. So we're working on that. So what would happen is I will make the designs and I'll submit to him 10 designs. He will then whittle it down to maybe 5. We'll then go more granular. And then we'll whittle it down to 3, and then we'll do costings, pricings, we'll find the stones, we'll source the stones. If the client has some other stones existing, we can incorporate those, but it's definitely driven by the client. We're lending our expertise, we can do anything.
The very large diamond down there, now, I mean, something like that is not easy to wear, is it?
You're asking the wrong person. I said to someone earlier, that could be a pinky ring. Quite literally, it could be a pinky ring. It's a statement piece. You could set it in a tiara. You could set it as
could be, but
well,
it's
yes, exactly. I mean, it's some pinky.
You could have it in the top of your cane when you go to your white tails dinners that you do.
I could.
I think there's a bit of a segue there into, obviously, we were talking to Josh Pullen earlier, head of the luxury division. We were talking about the way selling has evolved between live auction, online, and of course Sotheby's has great success in selling online, as we do with cars. But I think I'd like to say, at least in our world, and the magic of being here in this room, of course you can have a view prior to an online sale, and I'm sure you do, but then that interaction, that learning from other people in the auction environment, meeting people that collect and comparing notes, I think is, for me, invaluable. And I really do think that's an added benefit of being in the live auction environment. I mean, we have the same. Somebody may come and say, I really want to drive that on the Corso Clienti program, but frankly speaking, if they're over 15 stone or even over 12 stone and over 5'9", they probably can't.
Yeah.
They won't fit in it, and you're not going to modify a historic car like that.
Yeah.
So there are different dynamics to the whole process that we're all involved with that are very similar. And the same, I guess, wearing trying on a watch.
Yeah, I mean, to speak about here this Geneva thing, live auction. At the watches exhibition, you will see people bringing their own Geiger counter when they check the dials, and to see if the luminous material is still the original one from the 40s, 50s, whatever.
So if it goes off the scale,
absolutely. So they bring their own Geiger counter, and this is something really interesting to see because. Yeah, that's really.
Do you mind if I hold the big diamond?
Yeah, please.
To say
please do.
I'd like to feel the weight.
Security.
Well, we launched it. So we launched it in Dubai a few weeks ago, and there happened to be, it was at the Diamond Exchange in Dubai, and there happened to be a retired NBA player, Charles Smith. And he picked it up, he loved it, he put it in his hand, and it was hilarious. I said to him, please don't post that, because it looked so small in his hand.
It is,
He's got an enormous hand.
It is such an amazingly tactile thing.
Oh, it's lovely. You
to
feel
some
the
it's a
weight
piece of
and
glass,
the
but
weight. The temperature of it.
The weight is impressive because the density of the material. So a carat is 0.2 grams, so this is 60 grams.
Yeah.
This is really.
And tell me, I bought a diamond and had it set for my wife, an engagement ring. She hasn't had any other jewellery since. But anyway, regardless of that, maybe tomorrow.
He bought it in Argos.
No, but I really enjoyed that process. I really enjoyed selecting the stone, and at the time, the jeweller laid them all out on the white piece of paper, so that's the way you can select. We traded off between the C's, colour, cut, clarity, etc. I found a stone which I felt comfortable with in terms of all of those three things. It wasn't the perfect colour, but it was the shape, as well, really worked for what I had in mind. But when you're looking at stones, tell me, what's the first thing you're looking for? I mean, and obviously putting that on a white sheet of paper isn't going to tell you very much about it. So how do you view it as a jewellery expert? What's the first thing you're looking at?
For me, it's all about what stone resonates with you, what stone talks to you. I could line up five carat. I can get 5 stones that are all round diamonds, and on the GIA certificate, every single one of them is a 5.01 carat, 5.01, 5.0. D color, internally flawless, or D flawless, all of them, and they could be identical. I can put them on a tray and say, right, gents, jump in, which one do you like? They're all identical. On paper, you have the certificate, they're identical. One of those stones will speak to you more than the others. And I always say to clients, the cert is important, but go with the eyes. And when you look at colored stones, you look at a ruby. Maybe I prefer more of a pinky color in a ruby. Maybe my eyes see more of an orangey color. It has to be something that resonates with you, something that talks to you. Go with that, and then you can't go wrong. And who's to say that if the market says this is what you should be buying, this is what you should be buying, you're wearing it, you're giving it as a gift.
Well,
it should
and
be
Buy what you like.
Exactly.
That's what I always
because
tell my clients,
you
buy
know,
what you
cars are no different from any other collectible. You know, and we live in a market and a world where there are people that are buying. You know, with cars, you're going to buy a car because you want to drive it. Racing cars. A lot of racing cars are sold because people literally want to go out and race them. You know, they're not ornaments. They're not, you know, you're buying it just because it's what you've always wanted. And then, of course, we're also in a market where people are buying cars because they're never going to drive them. They're going to put them somewhere. They're going to store them. And frankly, they're just hoping that it's going to go up in value. Do you think that gems, given that's what we're talking about at the moment, I mean, can you say with any degree of authority that if I were to buy that in 10 years from now, it's going to be worth more than I pay for it today? Or I mean,
So we can, with certainty, we can look backwards.
Yeah.
And so we look back to how things track. So for example, this 5 carat 53 that we have in tomorrow for 11 million to 15 million, a 5 carat sold in 2017, I think it was, for 6 million. You can kind of compare like for like, and obviously certainly with colored diamonds there's always something different. A vivid blue is, if you line up 3 vivid blues, one will be slightly more saturated, one will be slightly lighter, there are more differences between colored diamonds than there are between 2 D-color white diamonds, for instance.
Okay.
But as a rule of thumb, have colored diamonds, certainly at this level of the market, have colored diamonds increased massively, and that's why it's become an investment vehicle for a lot of people, rightly or wrongly. And you know, you can have a purist and a collector. You can have your opinion on that. But if you look back to 2001, 2002, and you look back to prices now, have they changed? Have they gone north? Yes.
We sold a Mercedes 300 SLR Uhlenhaut Coupe earlier this year, one of 2 cars that have ever existed, and it completely changed the landscape for car collecting, well, values, because up until that moment, you know, the most valuable car in the world was $50-odd million. You know, a Ferrari 250 GTO. Now, interestingly, when we sold the Uhlenhaut Coupe, the opening bid was more than the most valuable car previously sold at auction. So we opened the bidding at 50 million, and the car sold for 135 million. Now, in the broader context of the collecting world, what that did was overnight put a car in the top 10 most valuable things ever sold at auction. Put it in at number 8. In a top 10 that is entirely dominated by artworks. I mean, I've just handled a box with a few gems in, which in itself...
Even fewer now after you dropped.
I mean, I'll don't get the Hoover out, anyone. The vacuum. But you know, the contents of that box are more valuable than a Ferrari 250 GTO. You know, it's if you're in the car world, that's staggering. just quickly, because people are fascinated by this. I mean, I'm putting you on the spot slightly. I mean, what is the most expensive gemstone ever sold? Single gemstone?
It would be a red diamond would be up, and not necessarily at auction. So at auction, we can research. We can give that. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But red diamonds are the rarest color of diamonds, and the largest red diamond in the world is 5 carat 11, which is tiny. I mean, this ring here is 5 carat 53. The blue diamond ring is 5 carat 53. The grey diamond is 10 carats. Largest red diamond in the world, 5 carat 11. So the price.
It's funny that you consider 5 carat as tiny. That's a different conversation. I mean,
Well, we have 300 here. 5's tiny.
I'm fascinated because I'm learning here. So, I mean, a red diamond's only found in a particular part of the world.
So this was found in Brazil.
In Brazil,
Yeah.
Okay.
And recently, and in the 90s.
Okay.
But this yellow diamond, this was unearthed in the 80s. It was found in DRC by a girl who was playing behind her house and saw this yellow rock and said, "Oh, what's this?" Gave it to her uncle. It was a rough diamond. Her uncle sold it, and then it yielded this 890 carat rough diamond.
I think this conversation needs a part 2, doesn't it? Really, because it is fascinating.
It's
I mean,
fascinating,
it's nice
I find it interesting because auction talks a lot about the provenance of stones and how stones are formed deep in the Earth's crust. There are so many more facets, no pun intended, that are just fascinating. Fascinating.
And just quickly, if that red diamond, if somebody brought that to you and said, "Okay, Paul, just let's take it to auction, put an estimate on it." I mean, where would you even
You'd
start?
have to be a Ferrari owner first, wouldn't you? Obviously?
We like to take things inexpensively, but auction. I was working recently on a red diamond, private sale of red diamond, and it was round about a 5 carat. And the asking price, and again, asking price is an asking price, but the starting off asking price was in the region of $100 million US.
Holy smoke! Okay, so interesting. So we could see a diamond enter that the echelons.
Could
of that
be the most
top
valuable thing ever sold at auction.
Because it's I guess it's like with the cars. It's okay. Here we are. This is the one piece. Find me another one.
Let's move on to the world of watches. We're here at in a room full of gems and watches, and we have the car.
Yeah.
And the reason you've selected that watch from the whole catalogue is that there's a bit of a car-related
actually, it's
connection here.
even a little bit more than a bit. So
yes.
hand it over to you guys.
And it's a big watch. So again,
it's a big watch.
For listeners, it's a big sort of quite angular watch, sort of quite industrial looking, would be fair to say, isn't it? It's gold. It's got a black bezel and a black leather strap. It's a big thing.
I'm pretty sure you've seen the design before. So this is one of the most iconic designs we have in the watch industry. It's the Royal Oak by Audemars Piguet, launched in 1972. This year is the 50th anniversary of this model. This is an offshore model, and it came out in 2006, a limited edition, Rubens Barrichello. And that's now the link to this car, which is actually really nice that we have it here. It's limited to 500 pieces. This is the prototype. So you would see a tiny number on the back, PR01, so prototype 01. This is a watch that was never made for the market, never made for sale. It was the pre-series model, just to see how the watch looks and if the clients would like it, like a display model of this watch. It's made in stainless steel. The actual model is in rose gold. This one is stainless steel and then gold plated. And as I said, Rubens Barrichello, and back in those days, Michael Schumacher was driving the car. Rubens Barrichello was his
teammate. Exactly so.
So this is, I think, whoever is interested in this car should consider the watch. Because
that's a conversation that needs to be had tomorrow with the
Absolutely, the price tag is not as high as with the car. So here we are talking about starting price of 100,000 Swiss francs. But it's a super interesting.
And of course. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
I mean, because when you did briefly tell me about this watch earlier, I said to you, "Oh, well, that's interesting." But so there's no precious metal in there. It's stainless steel.
I mean, actually, tiny pieces. Like the crown is in rose gold, and also the clasp here on the back, because they took this probably from another model that they had. But the case, as you said, the case is in stainless steel.
And is the bezel ceramic?
Yes, it's a ceramic bezel, and you can see from the side it's really nicely made to. It looks a little bit like skeletonized to save material, and this is something you would do with a race car too, to have it as light as possible. For a watch, it's not necessary to have it light, but this was made just to show what is technically possible, and you can see a similar effect on the dial. You have a semi-skeletonized dial where you can see the movement through.
And so the point is that although its material value in the sense that it's not solid gold is less than one of the production watches.
Absolutely.
The pure fact that this is a one-off pre-production prototype, let's call it, clearly makes this of this series of 500 watches.
500.
This is the one to have.
This is a unique piece. And
so is that the 501st?
No, it's like zero, because after
zero.
that came number one.
Okay.
So I would say it's zero. And we have a letter by Audemars Piguet where they confirm that this is a prototype watch that was never made to be sold.
There is an inextricable connection between the world of watches and the world of cars, in the sense that and that manifests itself, I think, in two different ways. We know for sure that people that buy cars also, a lot of those collectors do also collect watches, even if they collect nothing else. Quite often in motoring media, the dedicated motoring media won't tackle very many other subjects beyond cars, but the one topic that they do tend to cover is watches, which says an awful lot about that connection between watch collecting and car collecting. And then, of course, the other way in which that relationship manifests itself is that we see the likes of Tag and Chopard and Rolex and plenty of other watch brands as well have built quite big marketing campaigns around their relationship with cars, and Formula One teams and all sorts. Why do you think that is? I mean, why do you think that there is that connection between the car world and the watch world?
I mean, I'm not sure, but it might be because watches are quite technical usually. So, and what we realize is that people are asking for that. People are asking more and more questions about the technical details of the watches, like the power reserve. We had the conversation before about complications and everything. And I personally find it super interesting to see how much technique is in a small tiny piece like that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, so this is not one of the super complicated watches, but still it's absolutely stunning to see what is technically possible. So that might be the reason.
I completely agree, and I think, well, firstly, motor racing is about going quick, and you know how quick you're going if you have an accurate timepiece.
You've got to time it.
I mean, there's almost a natural link for that reason, unless you tend to take so long. You could
sundial. Use a sundial to time it.
And you can. The date changes by the time Peter finishes the race. But anyway, as a car person, I love watches too. But I think we just love. I love hi-fi, vinyl. I love the engagement with the object, the keeping it perfectly balanced, keeping it perfectly set. But the one you're displaying as well, it has that feeling of a sports watch with the look of materials that are precious metals. But still, watches seem to be much more collectible, or is that just because the price point is broader?
I don't think it's about the price point. Sometimes a steel watch would even be more expensive because it's more thought after. Not in the primary market, but maybe done on the secondary market. Maybe it's because of the material. Stainless steel is quite robust, quite
hard-wearing.
Hard-wearing, yeah. So, and precious metals like gold is super soft. So that might be a reason. And usually people who are collecting watches want to wear them. So whenever you wear it, you get tiny scratches on it and so on. And this would happen more likely with a precious metal watch.
They get. I think the term is tool watches, isn't it? They get described as tool watches.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, the thing is with the Ferrari, and what makes that car not necessarily more valuable, but very appealing, is that engine has been completely rebuilt by the Ferrari factory. And a Formula One engine, you can only run those engines for a few hours before they have to be rebuilt again. Because you've got to remember that one of those engines is only really designed to last for the duration of one race, a couple of hours, really. Mechanical watches, and that is why I like clear case backs, because it is wonderful to look at the movement of a watch.
I was about to mention that before. Nobody needs a clear case back from wearing the watch, but we like it because then we can see the movement,
Because
we can see the engine.
It is astonishing what can be crammed into a watch case, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the miniaturization, and the fact that these things, unlike the life of a Formula One engine, they just go on and on.
Absolutely.
And on. I have a not very valuable mechanical hand-wound watch on my wrist that belonged to my grandfather, and I can tell you I think it dates from the 50s. It has never been serviced. Never been serviced, and I wind it and it keeps almost perfect time.
Yeah.
And I find that absolutely astonishing, because cars are not that reliable.
Yeah, but you should get it serviced.
I know.
That's advice. You should get it at some point.
Although
because
the service would cost more than the value of the watch. But
that
yes.
might be that. But yeah, if you like the watch, you should consider doing that.
As well as bringing the watch, you bought a rather interesting and quite ornate, shall we say, clock. Tell us a little bit about that.
So this is a dome clock by Patek Philippe, made in 1989. It is beautifully made with this animal work around it. And Patek Philippe is not only, I'm putting it back on the table because it's quite heavy actually. It's made of gilt. Patek Philippe is also known for making these dome clocks. The series are super small, so they're quite rare on the market. And this is a unique piece. And the story behind this is quite interesting, and that's again a link to you guys, to the car world. You can see the Bentley logo on top of it. So this comes from a client who is a passionate race car driver. He drives a Bentley from 1929, sorry. I don't know the model, you're more an expert in that. And his wife had made this watch for him as a gift. So she got in contact with Patek Philippe and brought a picture, a photograph, and was like, I want to have this car on the clock. So they made it from this picture, and we are offering this clock now with the photograph, with the guy in his car, with all the paperwork of the clock, and even with the original drawings by Patek Philippe.
That's fabulous.
And that's quite interesting, because usually these would always stay in the archives. So this is not for the public, but the guy told us, she insisted in taking this home, and they were like, no, it's not possible. And she was like, yeah, then I will not buy the clock. So like, okay, then take it. So now we have it, and this is what is really a full set. So we have the clock, we have the box, we have the paperwork, we have the drawings, and we have the photograph of the previous owner.
Astonishing. And that's being offered for sale from the original.
Absolutely. So
owner.
It comes from first hand. And what is also interesting about the clock itself, you can see it here on the back.
A solar panel.
Exactly. So this is a quartz movement, and it's driven by the solar panel. And it is a beautiful desk clock for any car enthusiast.
And that's really interesting, because this is a manufacturer that has really built its reputation on mechanical movements.
Yes.
And for this, they've gone with a quartz. I dare say you can't really possibly know, but why do you think they went for a quartz, the solar-powered quartz movement rather than the mechanical movement?
Patek Philippe is also known for trying out things like that, and they invented that in the 70s. So that's really early, considering using a technology like that, and maybe that's the reason why they still do it.
We'll finish up now, but we probably can't not talk briefly about Rolex, because they're so synonymous with motorsport. In fact, we're doing a sale in June next year, which is the 100th anniversary of the Le Mans race, and Rolex is the timing partner for Le Mans, and we possibly might try and find a couple of timepieces that we can throw in with that auction. Why do you think that the Rolex brand has developed this kind of incredible global it is instantly the most globally recognized watch brand, isn't it? Why do you think that is? I mean, is that because the watches are simply magnificent? Is that the wonder of marketing over anything else?
I think it's two reasons. The first is quality. Rolex is not known for making the most high-end watches when it comes to complications. But what they do in the absolutely highest quality. I think that's reason number one. Without that, it would not work, and then it's marketing. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
From the very beginning on, they did fantastic marketing.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Paul. That's been absolutely fascinating, and I am never going to be. I'm never going to be standing anywhere acquiring any gems of that value. So it's been actually a real privilege for you to get these out of the cabinets and
amazing.
And let us handle them. That's been amazing. So thank you very much.
You're
and
welcome.
I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. But thank you everyone at home, whether you're watching or listening to the RM Sotheby's car show. And I hope you found it as interesting as I have. I've learnt a lot. And please join us for the next episode. You can download the podcast in the place where you always get your podcasts. So thank you. We'll see you next time.